Welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving into the epic 10 millennia story of Cyprus. If you just glance at a map, Cyprus might look like this quiet little island floating in a flat blue sea. But historically, it has been anything but quiet. We're going to uncover exactly why its unique geography transformed it into a fiercely contested prize for ancient empires, and how that literal millennia-long tug-of-war completely shaped its incredibly complex modern identity. Let's get right into it. To understand how all these overlapping imperial influences led to the island's reality today, we're going to follow a quick roadmap. We'll start with the ultimate Mediterranean prize, move through the March of Empires, Ottoman rule and cohabitation, British control and nationalism, independence and division, and finally wrap up with its resilient cultural mosaic. All right, Section 1, the ultimate Mediterranean prize. Let's see why this specific piece of land was so fiercely contested. 10,000. Just let that sink in for a second. We're talking about 10,000 years of human habitation on Cyprus. It's a massive testament to its enduring appeal. We're not just looking at some brief passing settlement here. We're talking about 10 millennia of continuous human footprints. From early Neolithic communities building primitive wattle and daub huts out of mud and woven branches, all the way up to the modern era. But why? Why did they all flock here? Well, being the third largest island in the Mediterranean is definitely a perk, but honestly, its location is everything. Look where it sits, right at the strategic juncture between Egypt, the Levant, and Anatolia. It was the perfect natural stepping stone. But it wasn't just about location. Geology played a huge role too. Cyprus was absolutely bursting with highly coveted copper. In fact, the English word copper literally derives from the name Cyprus. So you combine this geographic crossroads with a massive economic engine and you get an irresistible target for the outside world. Which brings us right into Section 2, the March of Empires. When you look at this timeline, you really get a sense of the dizzying, revolving door of empires that swept through. We start way back with the Assyrian Empire in 709 BC, then move to Egyptian rule, the Persian conquest, and then Roman appropriation in 58 BC, which, by the way, brought a period of profound prosperity. Then jump ahead to Venetian control in 1489 AD. And the crazy thing? This maps out just a fraction of the invaders. We could easily add the Byzantines, Arab raiders, Crusaders led by Richard the Lionheart, and the French Lusignan dynasty. The list goes on and on. So what's the big takeaway here? Every single one of these occupying forces viewed Cyprus as a tool, a deeply strategic tool. They extracted immense wealth, especially that natural copper we talked about. They used the island as a vital military and maritime outpost to lock down trade routes. But it wasn't just a one-way street of taking. These empires introduced diverse writing scripts like Phoenician and Cypro-Syllabic, totally new architectural styles, and new religions. Politically, they'd often just oust the local Cypriot kings and replace them with heavy-handed foreign bureaucracies. They were constantly, fundamentally reshaping Cypriot society from the ground up. Now let's shift gears to Section 3, Ottoman rule and cohabitation. If we compare these eras, we can clearly see a massive pivot. The Ottoman system basically replaced the highly oppressive Latin feudalism of the Franks and Venetians. See, under the Venetians, the Greek-speaking Christians faced harsh serfdom and really intense religious persecution. But the Ottomans? They actually abolished serfdom. And crucially, they officially recognized the Greek Orthodox Church as a self-governing body. This was a game changer. It allowed a significant measure of local autonomy because the archbishop was now permitted to regulate the social, educational, and religious affairs of his Greek Cypriot flock, basically in exchange for collecting and paying taxes. Following that conquest, there was a massive demographic shift. Around 30,000 Turks were settled on the island from the mainland. And what is absolutely vital to understand about this specific period is that for the next 3 centuries, Greek and Turkish Cypriots lived together in mixed villages all across the island without overt, widespread conflict. It was an era of relatively peaceful, non-segregated cohabitation. But as we'll see in Section 4, things change. British control and nationalism. Jumping to 1878, Britain didn't actually conquer Cyprus. They just leased it from a fading Ottoman Empire to secure strategic access to the newly built Suez Canal. But under British colonial governance, which leaned heavily on indirect rule and taxation, the sociopolitical landscape really started to fracture. Local resentments were stoked. Slowly but surely, this intense national consciousness awakened among the population. People started developing dual loyalties, a local loyalty to the island itself and a wider loyalty to their respective ethnic nations. To really grasp this era, we need to understand one critical term, enosis. As nationalism swelled under British rule, enosis, which was the political movement and deeply held desire of Greek Cypriots for the union of Cyprus with Greece, took center stage. Fueled by the church and a surging sense of Greek identity, this singular concept essentially became the driving force behind much of the 20th century tension we're about to explore. And understandably, it was vehemently opposed by the Turkish Cypriot population. And that leads us straight into our fifth section, independence and division, the most heartbreaking era of Cypriot history. In August 1960, Cyprus finally broke free from British colonial control and gained independence. It was set up as a republic with a very carefully regulated bi-communal constitution, meaning a Greek Cypriot president and a Turkish Cypriot vice president. But that delicate power-sharing agreement rapidly unraveled, thanks to a severe lack of political will and just stubborn intransigence on both sides. The treaty conditions completely failed. By 1963 and 64, tragic intercommunal violence had erupted across the island. That peaceful cohabitation we saw earlier was totally shattered. Hundreds of civilians lost their lives, and thousands faced the devastating reality of being displaced from their homes. And all this tension completely boiled over in July 1974, following a coup staged by Greek Cypriot military officers aiming for enosis. Turkish armed forces descended on the island. Now, historically, this highly polarizing event is viewed through two sharply distinct lenses, and we have to look at both impartially. Perspective 1 views this as a legitimate military intervention by Turkey, initiated specifically to protect the Turkish Cypriot population from the coup. Perspective 2 views this as a military invasion, an illegal occupation, and the outright subjugation of a sovereign nation. These two sharply contrasting viewpoints, they remain at the very heart of the island's political deadlock to this day. The direct, lasting result of that 1974 conflict is represented by this number right here, 30%. That's roughly the portion of the island in the north that remains under Turkish control today. This profound division displaced hundreds of thousands of people from both communities, drawing a literal line across the island that still exists, leaving an indelible mark on the lives of every single Cypriot. Despite all this modern pain, let's step back for our final section, Section 6, a resilient cultural mosaic. Think about it, with so many empires, Assyrians, Romans, Venetians, Ottomans, British, leaving such a heavy mark, it begs a really fascinating question. What actually survived within the daily lives of the people? When an island is used as a stepping stone for the rest of the world, does it somehow retain its own soul? I absolutely love this quote from our sources because it hits the nail right on the head. A man of honor never gives up the secret of his cooking, not even in death. Food is such a powerful anchor for culture, right? Over millennia, Cyprus absorbed everything. We're talking Arabian citrus, olives, fieldfares, Persian spices, sweet pastes, the whole shebang. But rather than just copying other cultures, Cypriots blended all these external influences into a fiercely protected, uniquely local, and deeply shared culinary tradition. And you know, that resilience extends way beyond the kitchen. Whether you look at the exquisite traditional Paphos ceramics, or those incredibly intricate quilts villagers wove to adorn bridal dowries, or just the island's vibrant folklore, this heritage was built collectively. It wasn't built by just one empire or one ethnic group. The art, the crafts, the food, they're all the product of a beautifully blended, indomitable culture. The island truly belongs to all its inhabitants, who have spent 10 millennia building this incredible cultural mosaic. So I'm going to leave you with this final thought to ponder. We've seen exactly how geography made Cyprus a prize, how empires extracted its wealth, and how modern nationalism ultimately fractured its communities. But beneath all that political division lies a rich, deeply intertwined history. Can an island that truly belongs to all its inhabitants find unity in its shared 10,000-year heritage? It's a question that doesn't just summarize the Cypriot story, it invites every single one of us to think about the enduring power of shared culture over the passing shadows of empires. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and remember to keep questioning the history behind the headlines.